Welcome back, learners. We were discussing about the technical loss reduction. So Madam Chandra will continue these discussions and presentations regarding the technical loss reduction. After that she will discuss about the commercial loss reduction. So now I would like to request Madam Chandra to continue, please.
So well friends, we were talking about high voltage distribution system for reduction of technical as well as commercial losses. As I told you, high voltage distribution system helps in both reduction of technical and commercial losses because the length of the LT line reduces considerably. And if you use aerial bunched cables, then for the LT, then you are liable to have very less commercial losses. So we'll come to what is an aerial bunched cable later on, but high voltage distribution system, the transformer size is less. You use 10 kVA, 16 kVA, single phase or 3-phase transformers. The high voltage distribution system could be 3-phase type, a single phase with neutral, or single phase with the 11 kV voltage. It could be 6.35 to 0.4 or 11 kV to 0.4 single phase or 3-phase distribution system, or it could be a mix of the same. In fact, when high voltage distribution system is not a new technology, it was started in the 90s in Andhra Pradesh, and at that time they installed single phase high voltage distribution system with single phase motors. It was started in Warangal district, where the 3-phase motors were changed to single phase by the utility itself, by APSCB, and the farmers were given a guarantee that if the motor fails within 1 year, then the utility would replace it free. So what happened was that the farmers in the 11th month or 12th month would damage their motors and to get a new replacement. So the experiment was not a very great success at that time, but with the current scenario of high technical and high commercial losses, high voltage distribution system is catching up quite a lot. And in the RGGY, the Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana, we are having most of the system as high voltage distribution system. The advantages of high voltage distribution system are: small size of conductor can be used as HV current is low. The voltage profile is better. Direct tapping from the line is avoided as it is 11 kV and you need a transformer to tap the line. Then line losses are much less. As I told you, 5 ampere current for a 100 ampere load and 140 ampere, so the line losses are much less. Reliability of supply improves, as if a transformer fails due to an LT fault. Generally the system fails because there is an LT fault, and when the LT itself is reduced, then reliability is improved. And further, whenever a transformer falls, it's only those 3-4 consumers who are connected to that transformer which are affected, and not when a large number of consumers, as in a case of say 630 kVA or a 1000 kVA transformer, where a large number of consumers are connected to one transformer. Faults on HT line are very less in comparison to LT. Therefore, and theft of electricity is eliminated to a large extent in high voltage distribution system. But while using HVDS, you have to be very careful. The precautions will come to later. For conversion of the low voltage distribution to high voltage distribution system, what we do is replace LT conductor with 11 kV conductor on the existing poles. It can be done on the existing poles. If clearance is not there, sometimes a riser sort of thing is added to the poles. Otherwise, it can be done on the same pole. Install small capacity 10, 16 or 25 kVA single phase or 3-phase on the poles, and energize 4 to 10 consumers from each transformer through MCCB distribution board and LT aerial bunched cable. In fact, in a high voltage distribution system, if you install meters on the distribution transformer itself for the consumers, then it gives a very rich dividend, because all the theft occurring beyond in the LT line is going, in any ways, is going to be billed to the consumer. So he will not indulge in theft from the line. And he will also prevent his neighbor from indulging in theft. So it's like own your transformer scheme. So LT theft is generally practically eliminated if you use high voltage distribution system. Not that it doesn't occur occasionally, because the Indian brain is very fertile and we find ways and means to overcome this. But we did install meters on the high voltage distribution system on the pole itself where the transformer is installed, and it was found that in those feeders the theft was completely eliminated. If you compare the high voltage distribution system and the low voltage distribution system, then if the current in the LT distribution system is 100 amperes, then the current in the high voltage distribution system is going to be 11 amperes. If the losses are 100 kilowatt in the LT distribution system, they are likely to reduce to 8.5 kilowatt in the high voltage distribution system. If the voltage drop is, say, 100 volts in the low voltage distribution system, it's only going to be 12.7 volts in the high voltage distribution system. So the comparison, if you see on the front of losses, current, voltage, everywhere you'll observe an improvement if you use high voltage distribution system as compared to low voltage distribution system. So these are the short-term measures which we could have completed in a shorter time frame, which was 1 or 2 years. These bring immediate improvement with lesser investments, but for a distribution system, we have to have some long-term improvements. We have to plan for long-term improvements, and the time frame considered for distribution system improvements in long-term measures is 3 to 5 years. You don't plan for improvements in a distribution system beyond 5 years, because the distribution system is generally very dynamic. Because in transmission or generation you plan for 15 years ahead or 10 years ahead, but in distribution what is really going to happen in the field may be quite different from what you have envisaged. So long-term plans are generally prepared considering a horizon of 5 years. So the scenario of load growth in 5 years. The long-term system improvements are measures which are taken to improve the system for reduction of losses as well as for meeting the future load demand. Because you have to improve the system not only to reduce losses but also to meet the growth in demand during the coming 5 years. As you know, the demand grows very exponentially in most of the areas. People who were earlier using only fans are now using coolers. People who were using coolers are now using ACs. People who were using one AC are now using 2 ACs. And industrial growth is also going up. Commercial establishments are growing. So we have a very high growth in electricity. So to cater to that demand, we need to plan our distribution systems for improvement as well as for strengthening to meet the future load demand. Both measures, so those measures which are taken in 5 years' time, like construction of substations, construction of 33 kV lines, 11 kV lines, new substations, and augmentation of the system in the next 5 years, that is called long-term measures for system improvement.
Nowadays, the more developments are taking place on the commercial side. You know that in various areas the developments are there and malls are coming up. These malls have a high energy requirement, and their connected load itself would be in few megawatts in a city, and therefore the distribution company has to be especially in touch with the commercial sector, and must be in commercial sector as well as the town planning agencies. Like in Delhi, say DDA, or there are now development agencies in all major cities. They have the Delhi development, city development agencies are there. So what are their future plans, and how are they going to distribute the land in the various areas? What are they planning to set up, like hotels or the malls, etc. So distribution company has now to plan in advance. This is what Madam Anjali is saying, that advanced planning is very necessary, and short term, medium term and long term. Long term there may not be much in the distribution system, but short term and medium term definitely there is a need to pay attention, so that you could size your transformers You could choose the locations of locating your transformers, and laying of cables could be done. Suppose there is a new colony coming up, where there are the commercial complexes as well as the residential complexes. So the distribution company can plan in advance so that there is no hodgepodge in the end, and the losses are kept to the minimum, and the cables etc. are sized properly. The orders are placed. You see, the ordering of transformers and cables is an engineering activity. It is not a non-engineering activity that you may end up in a hodgepodge system. You have to have a proper specification of the system, so that the ultimate goal is to keep the losses to the minimum, keep kind of a save yourself from the theft prone measures, use cables which cannot be tabbed, and things like that.
Exactly, so what you say, but the objective of long-term plans is to ensure quality and reliability of supply to the consumers, bring down technical losses to an optimum value, and phase the system expansion to match the growing power demand in the area under study. So load forecast is a very important part of the activity of long-term plans. The various activities which are required for preparing long-term plans is data collection regarding existing loads, operating conditions, forecast of expected loads, right from grid substation to consumer level. We have a global load forecast and a spatial load forecast. In distribution, we talk in terms of spatial load forecast, because the global load forecast tells what is going to be the growth in the entire area for which we are planning. But when we plan a substation, one area the area is divided into smaller grids, because one area may not be growing at the same rate as the other area. One may be residential, the other may be commercial, the other may be a mix of residential and commercial, the other may be agricultural. So the mix of consumers is different in different pockets. That is why we divide the global load forecast into a spatial load forecast to do distribution planning. So the load forecast should neither be over optimistic nor under, because if it's over optimistic, then you are going to put in facilities which are not required till a much later date. You will make investments which are not optimum. If it is underestimated, then you are going to make lower investments and you may not be able to meet the demand with the required quality and reliability of power supply. So both cases, load forecast forms up the very basis of forming long-term plans. And the more accurate your load forecast is, the more accurate will be your long-term plan. You will be able to plan better, your losses will be less, because either you will be otherwise underloading your system or overloading your system. In both cases, your losses are going to be higher. So the activities which you require is mapping of the system. This is, documentation of the distribution system is the most crucial part in preparing the long-term plan, and we do not have data for distribution systems. What happens is that the data for the distribution LT lines and the service connections is only with the lineman or JE. But to plan a system, you should have all the data right from the consumer level up to the 33 or 66 kV substation at a central level. It may be available in the sketchbook or in the minds of the JE, but it is not available to the planners. So the first thing is attempting a mapping of the system, and that, let me tell you, is 90% of your job, because it takes a long time doing a field survey for getting the data. Mapping of the system requires that you map each and every section of the line. In a transmission line, if it's 100 kilometers, it may be Moose conductor running throughout the 100 kilometers. But in 100 kilometers, the sections involved in a distribution system will be different in size, different in length. Even the span length is not constant in a distribution system. If you consider that the span length is 70 meters, no two poles will be located at 70 meters because of the physical constraints in locating the poles or in locating the distribution system. So you need to map the entire system to have the lengths, conductor sizes, the loads, the consumer, each and every consumer's load, his sanction load, his contract demand, everything needs to be mapped first if you want to plan, because unless you know the existing system, you cannot plan improvements and additions to the system to meet the load growth and improve the system. So once you have mapped the existing system, the transformers, their capacities, their parameters, you need the load data, the equipment data and the network data while you are doing mapping of the system. And mapping is generally done either in the single line diagram form or in geographic information systems which map the system on the map itself, which is like a map which you see in ATLAS. So that helps in a better understanding of the system. You do the mapping, then you analyze the existing system in respect of voltage regulation or voltage drops and the T&D losses in the existing system and the adequacy of the system to meet the current demand. Then you make a load forecast and impose that load forecast on the current system and see how inadequate it becomes to meet that load forecast. Then you plan for the upgradation and strengthening of the system to meet that load growth and also to bring down the losses. Both things have to be dealt simultaneously so that you are able to decide on an optimum system. There will be many alternatives. You can create a substation, you can augment a substation, you can have a new substation, you can have new feeders, you can have deconducting, you can have bifurcation of the lines. The options available to a distribution system engineer are tremendous for improvement as well as strengthening. So he has to decide on an optimum plan. That is where you know system studies help you. Softwares are available that what if I create a new substation, what will be the losses, what will be the cost of the system. So you want to find out a system which reduces the losses to a reasonable level, which is optimum, which is least cost, or at least if not least cost, at least minimum cost, because you do not want to invest more. So you find out, do a contingency analysis. What if I add a new substation? What if I augment the substation at this point? What will be the total cost of losses as well as the capital cost? What we say, the life cycle cost. What you decide your plans based on the life cycle cost, which is the cost of the capital investment as well as the cost of losses over the life cycle of the equipment. So you decide a long-term plan based on the best or minimum cost alternative, considering the losses as well as the capital investment to find out an optimal solution. And
Madam Anjali is using this term load forecast quite often, which is a very significant term in terms of a distribution company while planning for its future requirements. Let us concentrate, devote little bit time how the load forecasting is done. Load forecasting is a very complex exercise and it is full of historical information which one will have to keep. All loads would have to be categorized in terms of the commercial load, industrial load, domestic load, lighting load, electric traction, HT industries, 1 megawatt and above, LT industries, and the irrigation pump sets, the municipal system, and you have to categorize each load separately. You will have to see a distribution company in their own area of distribution will have to study how these loads have grown over the period of time. In last 10 years, in last 20 years, in last 5 years, what is the cumulative annual growth rates which have been seen? Generally the loads will grow in that pattern, but then since the system is changing, in our country more electricity is being made available to the people, their requirements are also growing. So you will have to talk to various sections of the society. You will have to talk to the bigger industries, that you have grown in this manner. What are your future plans? Do you need to invest more? Are you expanding your industry? And in next 5 years or next 10 years, how are you going to grow? Then you will have to talk to railways, for example. If you are a part of the bigger system, you will have to ask the railway that are you laying any new tracks, and new traction requirement are going to be there, and you need to tell us that what are your future requirements of electricity, because electricity needs to be supplied. Similarly to the commercial people, you may have to talk to various agencies in this sector, that how are they planning. For example, in Delhi you may have to talk to DDA who are allotting the land to the people, that what is the land use for this, the land is required. malls are being constructed, so malls requirement would have to be estimated. So like that, you will have to depend on the numbers of the growth rate of the last 10 years. How have been the growth rate? Every year you have to work out the growth rates. Sometimes there might not be a growth in any particular year because of various constraints, because the government policies, because of other inflationary trends, or because of various reasons. So you have to ignore that. Maybe that you have to choose the highest growth rate in the past for predicting the future requirements. This is one way of doing it. It is called the trend method of forecasting. Another is that the end use method you have to work out. In a domestic sector, you will have to work out how many domestic units are there, how many houses are there. This you will have to go to the survey of Registrar General of India. Census numbers you will have to go. How many people make one unit of house, and what has been the average number of consumers in the past, for example, how they will grow in the future. So, and then the requirement of each consumer unit, how it is growing, how it will grow in the future, what are the number of consumer units which are going to grow, and then you have to make your own estimates and then come to a different number. Each sector estimate of the future demand, you will have to make it sector wise: domestic sector, commercial sector, industrial sector, railways, municipal, lighting, and so on and so forth. Then you have to combine together. So this kind of a survey holds good for next 5 years. You will find that when you make your estimates of the future load demand, then for next 5 years you will be able to predict very precisely what is going to happen. It has been seen that the consumption patterns you are able to predict. The peak load you may not be able to predict, because peak loads there could be variations depending on how the usage takes place, what are the policies of the government or the distribution company. So peak load might vary, and you might make a little mistake on predicting the peak load, but that is not important for you. That is not that much important for you. As long as you are able to provide for the energy requirements of the people, and then more or less you must be satisfied, because there are other means of providing the peak load. Now further long-term future demand forecast is done based on, now it cannot be done individual, because over the period of time the individual sectors may not actually grow on long-term basis as per this pattern of the past and the future thing. So the long-term forecast is done based on the total energy requirements of the sector, maybe of a city, maybe of a region, or the country as a whole. Then you will have to take shelter of the GDP growth rates, how the nation wants to progress, and what are their future growth rates. Like we hear in TV, we hear from the economics, we hear from the planning commission that the country wants to grow at a rate 9 to 10% GDP growth rate. You must also understand that how 9% GDP growth rate would mean what? Which sector will grow at what rate? The agriculture will grow at what rate? The information sector will grow at what rate? The IT industry will grow at what rate? The industries have to grow at what rate? Then you have to make an analysis and decide of your own, make your own judgments how the GDP growth rate has to take place. There is a term called the elasticity. Now when the development takes place, today the elasticity is 1. Electricity elasticity is 1. That is, if the GDP has to grow at 9%, electricity availability has also to grow at 1%, at 9%. So it is called electricity elasticity as 1.0. But when the development takes place, the energy efficiency enters into the industries. The requirement of electricity comes down with the GDP growth rate. So the elasticity of electricity has to come down. It comes down to 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, and as it is taking place in the various developed countries like China, USA, Germany, it stabilizes somewhere between 0.56 and 0.7. So the electricity requirement comes down. It does not grow at that rate, and therefore the future requirement of electricity also comes down. That is how the long-term planning is done. And distribution company, a good distribution company will maintain a sufficient data for long past years, and then have their own projections for future years, keep on correcting their future information every year depending on the developments which are taking place, and then arrive at more information you have, more projections which you have, more good planning you will be able to do, and more reduction of losses you will be able to do. Thank you.
Thanks. So once the load forecast is made, we try to build up our long-term plan to meet that load growth which has been forecast, which takes into account the past trends as well as the future requirements. We take into account exceptional growths like a new virgin area is coming up, a new housing colony is coming up, new industry is coming up. We take into account all those which we get from the urban planning departments of the area for which we are doing the long-term plan. After taking that, we impose that load forecast on the system and see what we are going to do. So usually when we come up with an optimal plan, it may be advisable to put a 33 kV substation there, but there are certain physical constraints. You may not be able to get space there, or the land may be very costly, so you put them at locations which are not very optimal. But you do that because of the constraints on the ground. Your planning might say that you put a substation here, but you're getting a land for a substation or getting right of way for the feeders may not be possible. So it's a experience, judgment, and trying to come at a solution which is optimal in the given physical constraints which are available in the field. Once you do that, you find out an optimal solution which is least cost, which will have minimum losses compared to the various alternatives. You draw up a long-term plan, you firm up the scope of works, you prepare the cost estimates, you prepare a phasing of the works, because you do not need to construct all the substations or all the system in the first year. So your load growth takes place over the years, your improvement takes place over the years, so you do works which are required in a phased manner so that you are able to erect the substations, the lines when they are required. You don't do investments in advance. And then you carry out the cost benefit analysis of the long-term plan. And these long-term plans are generally funded through PFC, REC, APDRP. So all the system improvement plans at the moment are being funded under APDRP. The utilities may also get funds for the system improvement schemes through Power Finance Corporation or Rural Electrification Corporation. The long-term plan generally includes augmentation of the transformer capacity at the existing 66 or 33 by 11 kV substations, rearranging, configuring the 33 by 66 kV feeders, establishing new substations at the load centers, redistributing the load between existing and new substations, feeder strengthening, addition of new 11 kV feeders, addition of distribution transformers and LT lines, and at the same time adoption of modern technologies. Our system becomes obsolete over time. We incorporate new technologies for increasing the quality and reliability of supply, as well as for reduction of technical and commercial losses. We incorporate HVDS system, SF6 aerial bunched cables, name the technologies, SCADA, DMS, all the technologies which we can put in a reasonable time frame. We try to put in all those under the long-term measures. So for developing the long-term plans, we do system studies, which is called also the load flow study, to find out whether a long-term plan is drawn up to meet the statutory conditions in the 5-year period. The voltage must be within limits, the losses must be within limits. So to do those types of studies, we do them through software, and various softwares are available in the market. Off the shelf, you don't have to develop this software. You get the software and feed the data which you have collected from maps of the system into that software to get exactly how much will be the voltage in drop at each load node and what will be the current flowing in each section of the line. So long-term plans are generally prepared through the software tools which are available in the market. Then we will come to the commercial loss reduction portion, which people are eagerly awaiting. Commercial loss reduction is basically Action on the administrative, legal and governance fronts. Technical measures are available to reduce losses like aerial bunched cables, using underground cables, putting paint on overhead insulators, using right type of metering technology. But it's also a change of the attitude of the people as well as of the people working in the utility. It's to be tackled on the attitudinal front, more on the awareness front, public awareness, because commercial losses cannot be tackled alone through technical measures.
You want another file?
No, I'm just coming to that. I'll just come to that. So who are the beneficiaries of this commercial loss? They are usually antisocial elements and unscrupulous people who are indulging in theft. And the theft of power, let me tell you, is the menace and the sole cause of all elements of the power utilities. It is the cause of transformer failures, breakdowns of supply, customer dissatisfaction, commercial losses, poor collection of revenues, increased technical losses. You know, if commercial losses are high, your system is overloaded and you have an increase in the technical losses also. So if you contain commercial losses, your technical losses will also come down substantially. Then crisis, you have load shedding, also because of commercial theft, accidents, recurring losses to the utilities, poor credit worthiness, corrosion of integrity of the employees. You say that utilities are in collusion with the customer, non-deployment of the network to suit the new needs, low frequency and grid tripping, unscheduled power shutdowns, and bad image for the utility. So if we are able to control theft, we will be far ahead on all these fronts. So to tackle commercial losses is very, very important for the utility. So first, like we said, yesterday we discussed what are the types of commercial losses. The first was tapping or direct tapping from or direct hooking from the line. So what is the way out to stop direct tapping? You need to have a separate wing for this. You have to have vigilance squads, because the current set of officers are preoccupied and they can be easily influenced. So you need to have separate vigilance squads for tackling this type of menace, which is direct tapping. You have to select people with knowledge, tact and integrity, because they are dealing with and detecting cases which involve lot of people. They have to have tact and care. So you should, for preventing this, you should carry out surprise inspection by vigilance squads, periodic inspection of LT feeders by the special vigilance squads for tracing unauthorized consumers and direct tapping from line. It's easily visible. It is just that the vigilance squad points it out and takes action, whereas the local officer, even if he sees it, he is not taking action because he is not directly accountable for that. Then prosecution proceedings against persons indulging in theft of energy to secure convictions in the court. Special courts are being set up. And when you stop direct tapping and you go to court, then you should have some incriminating material. You should have some evidence. Therefore, the materials, wire and equipment should be preserved. This is for the utility engineer to see that when he catches a direct tapping, then he should preserve the wire and all. Because once you catch it and it is removed, then there is no evidence of the fact that the tapping was being carried out by this person. So all the materials, wire, equipment should be preserved and provided to at the time of court hearing to prove the crime. Because for a legal consumer it is different, but for a non-legal consumer who is not a consumer, how do you prove that he was hooking the line? So you can take color photographs, you can include witnesses, and you can ask the criminal to sign on the reverse of the photographs. And you should hand over the negatives to the concerned authority so that this is considered in court. And
It's
each
quite a difficult task
Yes,
for
it
the
is.
distribution company to catch the electricity thief on this, and also how can you make him sign on the reverse of the photograph, etc. He will not sign. So it's a very difficult task that first of all he has not taken any connection of electricity, and then once he removes that hook from the line, there is no proof that he
Exactly. That is why you have to
consumes
keep
electricity.
that wire
So
and take
perhaps there is a
photographs.
need to have a system of the on-the-spot fining or penalizing such consumers which are unauthorized consumers, and force them to take a connection and a metered connection to stop such thefts. For that, the cooperation of the various departments of the government and the distribution company would be needed. Now, since the anti-theft legislation has come, it has been made as a cognizable offence, these things would become much easier perhaps, and so that the help of the local police could also be taken in such cases.
That's right. So once you find a consumer who has been indulging in this sort of theft, then there should be an imposition of heavy fines, because then only it will act as a deterrent. Secondly, the utility should start a drive for regularizing the unauthorized connections and simplify the procedure for release of new connections to consumers. So if there's a simple procedure, he can get a connection easily. Maybe he'll come forward instead of tapping and hooking, where there is always a chance of accident, and also it's dangerous to his life as well as to other people. He might come forward to take a new connection if the procedure is very simple. And we should have a regular drive where consumers, you find the colonies where people are hooking, then you should have a drive in that colony for getting the consumers, unauthorized consumers, on the role of the utility. So I want to show you that it's not only the bare conductors from which people are stealing electricity, bigger consumers are stealing electricity from the distribution transformer itself. This is a photograph where the bigger consumer is stealing directly from the distribution transformer secondary. You know, people steal from hooking of the line, but they can also steal directly from the distribution transformers. From the secondary itself, they directly take the lines. And it's very difficult to detect, because, you know, people don't visit the distribution transformers regularly.
So can you show specifically that which one is the wires
Yeah, you
connected
can
by the
see.
thief by showing this?
Yes, you can see these are the wires going for.
Can we have that photograph? Can we see the photograph? Yes.
Can you enlarge this?
You can see these are the wires which the thief is taking. Actually, you know, you cannot have a very good photograph, but he is.
I want to give example of this case. This is not only. Don't think that this is just a theoretical thing that one can steal. I have seen a case in one of the states where when we were conducting energy audit of a substation, what we found that the electricity which is coming in is the electricity which is going out from the substation is much lesser, and we are unable to know where this electricity goes and then why, what is wrong with this. And after a lot of investigation, etc., we found that one HT cable directly from the substation has been taken to a factory nearby, and the fellow has been stealing quite a huge amount of electricity on this cable. I happened to be in charge of the grid operation at that point of time. And then I ordered disconnection of this one. The fellow is so influential, he reconnected in the morning. We disconnected again, he reconnected again, and then I started receiving telephone calls from the political people that don't do this here, and something like that. I mean, so as yesterday there was a question of theft of electricity on Jhuki Jhopri. These people might be stealing electricity, but this theft of electricity in terms of quantum of electricity stolen is very small. And our priority today is to focus on a higher quantum of electricity stolen. This takes place in the industrial area, and so any amount of action which we take on supply on HVDS or supplying through the cables or armored cables, etc., where we think that the stealing instance of stealing electricity can be minimized. These require much more efforts to save little electricity. I am not saying that this is not required. This action is required to be taken. After all, every unit of electricity has to be saved and efficiently utilized. But more action is required on the industrial front, where higher quantum electricity is stolen. And this example of directly taking from the HV line transformer is a very live example.
There are innovative methods, like we have also found theft of electricity from a 66 kV line, from a 66 kV cable which was laid underground. So where the amount is very large, people can even steal at higher voltages, but the ordinary consumer will not steal from higher voltages. Industrial consumers, they can go to any extent to steal from higher voltages also. They may even go up to 66 kV level or 33 kV level. They have the wherewithal and technology to steal from higher voltage also, because the amount of electricity bill is in crores. So to steal is very remunerative for them. So the next, the technological method which can be used is use of aerial bunched cables or partially insulated LT lines for preventing theft of electricity. It's easy to tap a bare conductor, but if you use an insulating paint over it, then first the paint will have to be scrapped to get electricity from the line. Or you could use an aerial bunched cable. Aerial bunched cable, since it is a cable, it will be difficult to tap energy. There is an insulation over the conductor, so first an insulation has to be removed. And usually now people are installing aerial bunched cables. The cost of LT aerial bunched cable system will not be very high. The underground cabling system, it comes 4 to 5 times the overhead cost, but the cost of an aerial bunched cable does not come very high, and it may be only 1.5 or 1.75 times the bare overhead conductor. But if you use it in theft-prone areas, the returns are going to be very fast, and your whatever you have invested on an LT aerial bunched cable may come back within 18 months or so.
Theft of electricity has also become a very highly specialized field, and in some of the states, I don't want to name them, there is a theft of distribution transformers from the stores of the distribution companies.
Oh my God!
And this is done with the connivance of all influential people. And so the stealer of electricity, the thief of electricity, has understood that from the HV line how to tap the electricity and then use it through the distribution transformer. So they steal the distribution transformer from the stores, and this is for consuming bulk of electricity from the HV line. So this is rightly so that this has become a menace in the country, and this has to be tackled, and this is a very, very serious issue in front of the planners of the country, where we find that about on an average I should say about 15 to 20% of electricity is lost in that procedure, and we lose revenue and the country loses as whole.
Thank you, sir. We were talking about aerial bunched cables. So in addition to reduction of commercial losses, there are other advantages of using aerial bunched cables. Diameter of the conductor bundle is less than that of 4 bare conductors, and the loading caused by wind, snow and ice is decreased, and therefore their supports, the poles can be placed further apart, and with fewer stairs these can be employed. The aerial bunch cable can be erected on the same pole as are used for street lighting and telecommunication circuits, saving considerable investment on poles and supports. It can also be installed along the walls of the building. The number of accidents are reduced because there is no bare overhead line. Higher reliability of supply is there as faults are reduced. The reactance of the AB cable system is very low, therefore the voltage drop on a LT distribution feeder for transmission of the same amount of power is low in AB cable system, and maintenance costs are lower. So you have many advantages of using aerial bunched cable system, and they should especially be used in theft prone areas. Because underground cable, it is quite difficult to install. You have to dig the roads, and the cost is very high. But aerial bunched cables, the cost you can recover within 18 months or so. In 2 years or 18 months, especially in theft-prone areas, you get the returns very fast. And if this aerial bunch cable is used with high voltage distribution system, what you say, sone pe suhaga, so you get the returns very, very, very fast. Reduce both technical and commercial losses. So to reduce tapping, one was that you use technical measures, you use aerial bunch cables, you use underground cables, you use paint on the LV lines. But the second most important thing is having a awareness campaign by the utility. Change in the value system of the society is also needed. We should change the attitude of the people.
Very important point, really.
That is very important in preventing, direct hooking. The opinion makers and social leaders should be involved to effectively tackle this social evil. And this, one is the leaders which should take an action, and some amount of public relation work by the utility is also needed to tackle this menace. It has to be widely publicized by the utility that theft will increase the tariff for the genuine consumers, result in poor voltages, burned motors, failed transformers and dry crops. So, we have to educate the non-consumers as well as the consumers that you are paying for those who are tapping. So, they will also help you in the campaign against those who are tapping, as well as the unauthorized consumers. They should be made aware that you are causing poor voltages. You yourself will have poor voltage due to this tapping. Your transformer will fail. You will have irregular power supply, and that the scarce resources of the state meant for social welfare are diverted to feed the power thieves. Because if you are stealing electricity, then resources from other areas which are more important, public health, education, they have to be diverted to create electricity capacity to meet the demand of these power thieves.
Theft of electricity has to be condemned by all. Let those thieves who are stealing electricity or who are jamming their meters and do not want to pay. Now today in some areas you will find that they take pride in doing this. They will advise their neighbors that this can be done like this, to temper the meter in this manner, and the bill will be reduced. So an awareness has to be increased in the society, and education has to be increased. I think everything can be solved by way of educating people. This is happening because of uneducated.
You may be getting free electricity, but then you are paying more for other facilities which the government could have given you free. You are paying more for health facilities. You are paying more for education facilities. The money is the same whether you use it for electricity theft or you use it for other. It has to be balanced by the government. If it's putting it in electricity for giving you free power, then it will not be able to give you free health or better health facilities or better education facilities for your children. That's what is to be brought to their mind, that you're not gaining in any way by stealing electricity.
Yes.
So then other measures are that you should have proper metering system. The mechanical meters tend to slow down over a period of time. They get sluggish, and you need to replace those meters by electronic meters, by better metering, prepaid meters. You need to do remote metering. You have various technologies available in the metering system, which we will come to, that you can install. You can replace all the electromechanical meters by high precision electromechanical meters or by electronic meters. Then especially you should have an analysis of the high loads. So you should have an ABC analysis of the consumers, and you should tackle the high revenue consumers first. Mostly it is seen that 70 or 80% of the consumers pay only 20 to 30% of the revenue, and it is only the 20% of the high-end consumers which generate 70% of the revenue. So you should tackle the 20% high revenue consumers, because if they indulge in theft, then the revenue loss to the utility will be much higher. The rest of the 70% you can leave to a later stage. You should have CT meters for high value services. You should install meters with tamper logging features. Mostly the electronic meters can detect, if they can detect and log those features. For example, if somebody is tampering with a magnet, the electronic meter can log that some tampering occurred at this time it was removed at this time, and it may be due to magnetic tamper. So it's possible to detect. You don't have tamper-proof meters, but it is possible to detect the tamper by the consumer. By not all types of tamper can be detected, but quite a few, like reversal of polarity, reversal of phase, all these can be tackled through electronic meters. So, when we talk of, these were measures earlier which we had talked about, were measures for controlling the theft for direct tapping of non-consumers. But in case of existing consumers, how do we control the commercial losses? First of all, non-working and defective meters should be identified and replaced. Unmetered services which are also consumers, but which we are billing on flat rate, should be metered. You should not give any supply without meter. Whether you give subsidy, you want to give subsidy, that is a different matter, but at least you should meter them. Generally, unmetered services which are getting flat rate do not want to be metered because they consume much more than what they should be doing. We give a single light point connection saying it should be using 60 units, but it may be using more than 200 units. So that is why they don't want a meter, because they are being charged for 60 units, whereas they are using 200 units. So you should install meters on all unmetered connections. No supply should be given without meter. The Electricity Act 2003 contemplates metering of all the services within 2 years and visualizes action on the company and the individual officer responsible for lapses. Electricity Act 2003 is that way a very progressive legislation which has envisaged that in 2 years we should have 100% metering of all the consumers. But we have not been able to achieve that due to various reasons, especially metering on the agricultural consumers, because the utilities do not have the resources to meter all the consumers. But that, the Electricity Act itself does envisage that all the consumers should be supplied electricity through a proper, correct meter. Then severe penalties again may be imposed for tampering with meter seals, etc. Theft of electricity should be publicized as a social and economic crime, and people should be informed of the provisions in electricity laws in this regard. People continue with theft because they are not detected, and they don't have that feeling that you will go to jail immediately if you indulge in such theft. For others, there is an inherent deterrent in the mind of the consumer that if he is caught stealing, he may have to go to jail. So that acts as a deterrent. But in case of electricity, generally people do not have that, inhibiting factor in their mind. So that the laws in this regard should be brought to the awareness of the consumer that what after the electricity enactment of the Electricity Act 2003.
Yeah, please, Ahmedabad, speak. Please.
Good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon.
My question is, what are the policies to produce power in future time?
To produce power.
Can you just give me your introduction and let me know how many learners are with you?
I am program in charge.
Okay, thank you.
I am ARD, Assistant Regional Director.
Okay.
My name is Tej Singh.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to ask a question: what are the policies to produce power in future time?
Do you have any learner of this program also with you?
Yes, we have at present time we have only one learner.
Okay, thank you.
So I think you could.
Okay.
So, Mr. Verma would like to comment on this question.
I would like to comment on this question. It's a very, very important, good question you have asked, that what is the policy. What we do that as told by me little time ago, that we make a demand forecast first. We forecast what would be the demand of electricity in next 5 years, next 10 years and next 15 years. And then we study what is the present availability situation of electricity. In the beginning of the 10th plan, which started in the year 2002 and which has now ended in March 2007, based on the demand figures and based on the gap, the shortage situation which we were facing at that point of time, we decided that 57,000 megawatt of electricity installation is required by the end of the 10th plan. But then at that point of time, by the end of the 9th plan, we were facing a resource crunch. We did not have that much finances available to us that we could install 57,000 megawatt of electricity at that point of time. So we reduced our targets of capacity addition by to 47,000 megawatt. A review was again taken that what is our organizational capability of the states and center, how much we can add. Finally ended up in a number of 41,110 megawatt at the beginning of the 10th plan. This was the target we set for ourselves for capacity addition to mitigate the shortages which we were facing at that point of time. And this target of 41,000 megawatt consisted of 25,000 megawatt to be added from the thermal capacity, coal, oil, coal, gas and lignite. Lignite is a brown coal. And then about 14,000 megawatt was supposed to be added through the hydro power generation, and a small about 3,000 capacity from the nuclear power generation was supposed to be added. Now this 41,110 megawatt capacity addition we could not achieve by the end of the 10th plan. We could achieve only 21,180 megawatt. So just around 50% of this capacity we could achieve. The reasons were that the indigenous manufacturers we have, they were not able to supply the equipment on time, and there were slippages at that point of time. The certain policy decisions we took that we wanted to go in for high efficiency generation system in the country because we want to save fuel. So we wanted to adopt the technology on the coal-fired power plants, which is called supercritical. Supercritical technology is a technology by which we use very high steam parameters, pressures and temperatures in our boilers, which would give us an advantage of 2% efficiency. Imagine that for gaining 2%, 1% or 2% efficiency in the power generation, we have to make very hard attempt of adopting new technology, which and then the indigenous manufacturers have to go in for new collaborations because we were not having that technology with us. And this collaborator did not agree to pass on this technology, and we got delayed. When we got delayed, about 4,000 megawatt capacity slipped on this account itself. Then we had certain gas-fired power projects included in our plan, and you know that the gas availability is very scarce. We could not get gas, and whatever the gas suppliers, whenever we discussed with them, they did not come forward and told us the price at which they were prepared to give us the gas. The gas availability was very low, and so we slipped on the gas-fired power plants also. Finally, we ended up in a capacity of 21,180 megawatt in the 10th plan. And now the bigger task was that whatever has happened has happened. Let us do a learning of what happened in the past. Why did we not achieve this target? So the sum total of this, we proceeded with the 11th plan, and we came to the conclusion, based on the demand numbers, Central Electricity Authority publishes its document of the demand estimation every 5 years. The 17th Electric Power Survey is the latest. We went by this. The demand. If you have a look at this document, which is available at the CEA website, you will find a very detailed power survey for next 15 to 20 years on this. And by looking at this document, you can come to know each state, each bigger cities, what is the demand of electricity in the next 5, 10 and 15 years. So based on this, we came to a number of 78,577 megawatt precisely. That is about 80,000 megawatt capacity is to be added in the 11th plan in these 5 years. This 78,000 megawatt capacity consists of 57,000 megawatt on the coal, about 16,000 megawatt on hydro, and a small 3,000 megawatt on nuclear, and the balance some small capacity addition would be there on gas, about 4,000 megawatt gas. So sum total becomes 78,577 megawatt. This is how we want to plan for the 11th plan. Now one can ask us a question that you had a target of 41,110 megawatt in the 10th plan, but you achieved only 21,180 megawatt. Now what is the confidence level which the country has today in believing and having a trust in the government and in Central Electricity Authority and the Ministry of Power, for example, that we have set a huge target of 78,577 megawatt to be added in these 5 years. The silver lining is that out of this 79,000 megawatt capacity, about 48,000 megawatt capacity is that which is already under construction. Now the capacity which is already under construction, the contracts are awarded. Now we cannot say today that they will not be commissioned unless something unusual happens and then we slip on this capacity somehow. But we are making sure that this 47,000 megawatt capacity comes up on time. Out of this 47,000 megawatt capacity, 9,000 megawatt are such which have slipped from the 10th plan. I mean, which should have been commissioned by March 2007. Now we find that these plants would, in any case, would be commissioned in this year, in the year 2007-8. This 9,000 megawatt capacity will come. This year will see a very large capacity addition to the tune of 17,000 megawatt commissioned in 7-8. So out of this 9,000 megawatt capacity, all this capacity 16,000 megawatt is under construction for this year, and they will come up. The government is taking very serious view, very serious action. All efforts are being made that there are no slippages on this capacity this year and next year. How? That this program is being monitored at the highest level. You will be happy to note that our Honorable Prime Minister of India is taking interest in the power capacity addition, and constant reviews are taking place on this capacity addition, and we would see that there are no slippages. What other precautions we have taken that this capacity does not slip is that we have included only those projects in this plan where the orders have been placed by March 2007. For example, hydro capacity, where orders have been placed, we know that within a period of 5 years the hydro capacity would come, so we included only those projects. So we are not being theoretical in our approach in this case. On a thermal station takes about 4 years to get commissioned, 3 to 4 years. So the plan period consists of 5 years. So we have seen that we have still time that those projects where the order is placed by say December 2007 end, only those projects are included. We have also identified about 15,000 megawatt capacity of the gas-based projects. Sites have been located, but gas is not there. But these projects do not form a part of 78,000 megawatt capacity. We will see that during the course of execution of these projects, if the gas is available, as some indications are there are gas finds, you know that the Reliance gas and other gas is available. If the gas is available, quickly we will shift to these gas-fired projects. Gas-fired projects can be commissioned within a period of 1.5 to 2 years. They have short gestation period, and therefore we will include some of these projects out of this 15,000 megawatt to include in our plan. You know, we take so many actions, so many precautions that if this does not come up, this another project comes up. We also identified alternately 11,000 megawatt capacity of the various types, maybe coal-fired power stations, which we find it is a reserve, hot reserve. I mean, we are simultaneously taking action. We think that if we have to commission 78,000 megawatt of capacity, we have to take action on at least 90,000 megawatt of capacity under construction, and various actions are being taken. So all round, many actions have been initiated by the government. The monitoring is being done very rigorously. The biggest constraint which we are facing today, which we envisage that will come in our way, is the manufacturing capacity available in the country. We have only one manufacturer called BHEL, indigenous manufacturer, who has to supply the equipment. They have been asked to increase their manufacturing capacity in future to 10,000 megawatt per year, so that it meets the requirement of the plan. Then we are likely to fall short of cement. We are likely to fall short of the steel manufacturing. Then we are likely to fall short of the balance of the plant, means coal handling plant, ash handling plant, water treatment plant. A thermal power generation is a gamut of various technologies. It is a very complex affair, and therefore the government is taking action on all these fronts. Do not think that we are sitting idle in this respect and just finalize the plan. Constantly there is an action We call the steel manufacturers, for example, tell them this is our requirement of the next 5-10 years. What are you going to do about it? Or do you have an import plan? Or we have an import plan. The fuel is going to be a big constraint. Now you would be surprised to know that the present power consumption, present coal consumption in the country is around 300 million tons per annum. We consume 300 million tons, and this is going to increase to 577 million tons by the end of the 5-year plan, next 5-year plan. So this is a very huge number. The present indigenous Indian coal mines will not be able to produce coal more than 500 million tons of coal. So we may have to import about 80 million tons of the Indian coal. Indian coal, when I say, would mean of the coal of that quality. But when we import coal, this coal is of a higher calorific value. It has high heat value in this, and the equivalent 80 million tons of say 80 million tons of the Indian coal would be equivalent to something like 50 million tons of the imported coal. It has high calorific value. So we are also having a plan to import coal on a regular basis. Last year we imported about 10 to 12 million tons of coal. Before that also about 4 to 5 million tons of coal. The action is there. Now importing coal is also not that easy, because you cannot say that we place order for import of coal and coal will come to you. You have to develop the port facilities. The various infrastructure is required. Even for coal transportation, the rail infrastructure is required. We have a lot of bottlenecks on the rail transportation. So we are in constant touch with the rail ministry, and the dedicated corridor has to be built for transportation of the coal from the coal mine to the power stations. I mean, there are various facets to the total power generation in the country. And then we have to arrange for nuclear fuel, and we are short of nuclear fuel. That is why you find one can say that you are having only target of 3000 megawatt on nuclear. But then this is one scenario of 5 years. Now what are we going to do in the long future years is that we study that our coal reserves are limited, our gas availability is limited, hydro capacity is also, total potential in the hydro capacity in the country is limited to only the northern region and the northeastern region states only. The total potential is 1,50,000 megawatt, and about 37,000 megawatt we have already exploited. Now hydro exploitation is again a very difficult area, because you have to go to difficult terrain, you have to go to those areas, mountains and hills, where the approach itself is difficult. The working is becoming difficult. Suppose you go to Jammu and Kashmir area, where the 6 months in a time it is always covered with the snow and ice, so people cannot work there. Only 6 months you have to be working. So to exploit this resource is a difficult task. We have made a plan that in next 10 to 15 years all our hydro resource we will exploit. The coal resource is also limited. We cannot go unlimited on the coal, but coal will support a major power generation in the country. The future hope is on the nuclear. Now we have the nuclear technology which is indigenous. We are going on the heavy water based technology. The reactors are based on that. We are developing the fast breeder reactors, so that in the fast breeder reactors the spent fuel on the current technology units we will be able to utilize in this. But then that is also indigenous development. We do not have the uranium reserves in our country. We will have to base it on thorium. The thorium availability in this country is the maximum in the world. If we are able to develop this thorium based technology, then our all power solutions will be there. There will not be any power shortage. There would not be a problem of saying that our fuel, we do not have coal. We will not need to depend on either coal, hydro or any other resource. This thorium based technology will be enough for hundreds of years to come for this technology, and this is how we are going about it. Side by side we are also depending on the renewable source of energy, called the non-conventional energy source of energy, like wind energy. We have solar, photovoltaic, biomass. Now these are kind of technologies which cannot support a larger program in the country. But then the wind farms have to be located in the area where the wind is available. This is mostly on the coastal side. We have total about 40 to 50,000 megawatt of wind energy potential. and a majority, about 10,000 megawatt is already exploited on this. But then we cannot depend on this. We classify the wind energy as a non-dispatchable energy. I mean, wind will be there at its own will. So the private companies are developing this, and there is a banking arrangement for this. I mean, they will feed the electricity to our grid, and they are captive, and they will draw the electricity from our grid whenever they need it. So such kind of arrangement is done on the renewable source of energy. Renewable source of energy is very expensive. To give you an idea, the solar power it costs something like 30-40 rupees per unit. No, we cannot afford it today. So therefore we are taking a policy kind of a view that perhaps the regulatory commissions of electricity, this is a part of the electricity, a part of this energy would be mandatory to be purchased by the distribution companies from the renewable source of energy. But then over a period of time they have to compete for themselves, to compete in the market. This power has to become affordable and payable by the consumers. Only then this renewable source of energy can come. I think for today's purpose, this is a very vast subject, and maybe some other time we will have only on this subject, how are we going to plan electricity in this country, and this must give you a fair amount of idea how are we going about planning for the future generation in this country. Thank you.
Future appears to be quite good regarding that availability of the energy in the country.
Yes, of course.
So we'll move forward.
We are coming to the end of the session. So you sum up quickly some of the important points.
Well, other important points is creating accountability in the system. Generally, there are people are not accountable for the energy which is fed into the system. So we created the concept of 11 kV feeder managers under APDRP. The utilities had to designate a JE or a lineman as a feeder manager, and he would be held responsible for the energy entering his feeder. And he will, if he is made responsible and accountable, then only he will ensure that no losses or theft takes place on his feeder. So the concept of creating accountability through energy accounting is very important. Then energy audit is very important and for reducing commercial losses, because you do not want to act like a generalist. You want to act like a specialist. You don't give Crocin for every disease. So you want to first segregate the technical and commercial losses, find out high loss areas where commercial losses are high, and then take action accordingly.
Some of the states have also incentivized their distribution people. I mean, they have fixed a target that, okay, if you increase the revenue from whatever percentage to suppose you are able to increase the 20% revenue, 10% will give you as a incentive, like customs and excise people.
To the employees.
Yeah. And this has helped really, because now the employees are incentivized that if we save losses on this, then they are going to be benefited by this. This kind of policy one has to carefully adopt. I mean, this should not result into a kind of exploitation.
Yeah, this also has its own implications, and wrong effects, actually in the system.
Should not encourage that kind of policy.
So the policy has to be looked into very carefully. That what are the benefits and what are the wrongs of that particular policy. That has to be evaluated first. Before
we should be able to improve our billing systems. We should be able to download meter through MRI, meter readings through MRI instead of using the meter reader to do manual reading. There are very many technologies available now. We can use a spot billing machine so that delays in delivery of bills and collections are not delayed. Then we need to increase the payment convenience. We can have payments through credit cards, through e-Seva Kendras, through call centers, so that the consumer is able to pay in time. He finds it more convenient to pay. We can have ICICI billing junctions or a corner shop taking the bills on behalf of the electricity utility. We can have drop boxes. So there are very many measures which we can take to reduce commercial losses also.
So really these were very good discussions and the presentations, and I think our learners must be benefited by these presentations and the discussions, and really I am thankful to our learners to participate in the discussions and ask questions, and I would like in the coming lectures that they should participate more and more, and they should ask their questions to the resource persons. We will be very happy to answer your queries. So we come to an end of this session today, and I would like to thank the resource person Madam Anjali Chandra and Mr. V.S. Verma. Really you gave very good input, and very healthy and very informative discussions were there. Thank you to all, and thank you to all learners. We will meet in the next video conferencing session with another topic and with another resource persons. If you need any topic to be discussed in detail, please let us know. We will arrange some sessions on those particular topics. So thank you. We will meet next time in another video.